Hi everyone, it's Catherine from Peace Etc. and I guide people who grew up in emotionally and mentally unstable homes to improve their self-esteem and self-worth, to feel more security and safety and stability within themselves. So, doing something that I'm not really used to doing, sharing, opening up about my parents and what I experienced with them. Some of my story, my journey. I do believe that what we experience becomes learning for like ourselves, but also for other people. And my intention in sharing is that what I share with you today becomes a seed for your own growth and healing, or that it can impact you in a way that it's meant to. And I tend to share my story from my heart. So when it comes to my dad, particularly, I remember him always having poor mental health and being unstable. My earliest memory of him, it's weird because I want to cry and it's been a while. But, and I sit with this, and I've sat with this so many times, but it does bring up some tears. But anyways, my earliest memory I have of my father is the ambulance coming to my home. And him being carried in a stretcher, in a gurney. And at that time, I didn't know what was happening, and I was 5. But I knew that something was off. I remember the paramedics coming to my parents' bedroom and putting him on the gurney and then rushing down. We live on a hill, but downhill into ambulance and just being helpless and not sure what was happening, but just that my dad was being taken away. And another memory that I have that's from my early childhood is of visiting my dad in a mental or psychiatric hospital. It's kind of idyllic because the hospital was in the countryside and my mom and I were going there. I remember buying these little plastic chains that kids play with to make hoops and rings, necklaces, whatever. But I also remember we were visiting my dad and I knew that something wasn't right. I do have some fun, loving, joyful memories with my dad, but those really stood out energetically as well. And growing up, I saw him in bed whenever he would have, major depression and suicidal ideation. He would be in bed And I remember just seeing him and thinking, okay, like I need to do something. I need to contribute. Like this isn't okay. And that fear of like him being taken away got stirred within me. And as a child, I wanted both my dad and my mom to be there, and I think that's pretty normal. So what I learned was to be a counselor for my dad. And I think I'm naturally very like nurturing and empathetic and caring, but I took on that role. And it's a role because I was being there for him even if I was going through something as a kid and as a teenager and as a young adult until he took his own life when I was 19. Whenever I would sense that something was off, when I would see that something was off, whenever I would be put into an unstable place because of his unstable mental health and emotional health, like I would get triggered into these roles. And at that time, I wasn't aware that I was playing these roles. There's also a mix of fear of abandonment. I didn't want to be abandoned by my father. I didn't want him to leave me. I love my dad very deeply. And I still do, even when he's somewhere else and I'm here. So his poor mental health, poor emotional health put me into survival mode. I was on the lookout for any signs of poor mental health or suicidal ideation. Like I would go out of my way to have conversations with my dad and ask whenever I see him depressed or sad. I couldn't just allow it. I would inquire, and ask him, how he's doing and how, what the voices in his head are telling him. And I would listen. It was also a way for me to secure peace in my home and survival whenever my mom would look like she had enough and that she needs a break from his mental health and being there for him. Then I would step in. I would volunteer and say, okay, I need to step in and give mom a break so that she's okay and that I would have both parents and I wouldn't lose either of them. And I would play more of that counselor role and nurturer role. This also looked like whenever my parents would have a fight and we wouldn't have dinner together, cooking for my dad. Because I know my mom can cook well for herself, but my dad, not so well. Like he could cook, but whenever these fights would happen and we wouldn't eat together, he would just go get like McDonald's or something, and I was concerned as a kid about his health and well-being, so I would cook for him a handmade meal. And I took this on into my relationships as a young adult. I would, really like romantic relationship too, and also friendships, where I would, whenever I'd sense that something was off or that my partner was going through something, then I would feel like I need to take care of them. Like I'd be triggered into it, and I didn't know why. And it can be a nice gesture and a very sweet gesture if you're willingly doing it. But I'd be triggered into doing things like that and showing affection and showing love even when I didn't want to. Like, for example, if I was fighting with somebody, with a partner, if we're in a fight, if they did something that I didn't like, if I noticed that they were showing emotional distress, then I would be triggered into providing, to making sure that they're okay instead of taking care of myself. And in a sense, like, it's survival mechanism, because I was relying on other people to give me that sense of safety and security. Going back to my childhood with my dad, when I knew that he was more stable, even if that was momentary, that made me feel safe and secure in my external environment, which then inside made me feel safe and secure. So that I was carrying that into my adulthood. And outside of romantic relationships and friendships, I would be there for people. This applies both to romantic and friendships, but like relationships and friendships. But, I would be there for people even if I was at max capacity and I didn't have any space. Instead of making space for myself and saying, I can't be there, I pushed myself to be there because I relied on other people to love me and accept me. My self-worth and self-esteem was so dependent on other people. And it's through inner child healing that I really saw where these behaviors are coming from, these survival mechanisms are coming from, and where I was not being me, not honoring myself to feel safe and secure, to be loved and accepted. From looking at these painful memories and seeing what they led to, I could see behaviors and thoughts and emotions and feelings that triggered the peacemaker role, the nurturing role, the counselor, the confidant, and from in seeing that clearly where it stems from, and that it wasn't stemming in unconditional love and acceptance for myself, or feelings of safety and security within myself, but in securing that outside myself, then I could say, okay, those aren't behaviors that I want to repeat anymore, that I want to exhibit anymore. And they can still be triggered within my body. Like, I may feel from time to time a need to, be there for people when I don't need to, or to provide. And I'm hearing, for me to be there to, because I saw my dad carry a lot of shame and not accept himself and love himself the way he was. I thought that as a child, that if I was there and if I took on his stuff emotionally, mentally, and also energetically, that he would be lighter. And then that would improve his chances of survival, which meant that it would improve my chances of survival. It made me feel secure. So then taking on other people's heaviness became my thing. And I would have my own shit and also other people's shit that I would need to process. And sometimes it was hard to differentiate those two. That's also a survival mechanism that I picked up in childhood. Yeah, and I was saying how these survival mechanisms can be triggered as an adult, just like if I'm stressed. Doesn't need to be the same triggers, but being stressed can trigger these behaviors and emotions and feelings and thoughts from my past. But now I know better, and I know that I don't have to act on them, that you can come down from triggers. And when you experience triggers, sit with it and not react. When you let them simmer, you can respond instead of react. And so I have more options available now that I'm not in survival mode and trying to survive. And I'm not dependent on other people for my survival. Yes, like as a human, of course, I need connections and other people to experience life, but I'm not dependent on them to make me, on other people to make me feel safe and secure, to accept myself and love myself unconditionally. So, what was I saying? Yeah, now that through inner child healing, I saw what my triggers were, where they're rooted in, why I was behaving the way I did, why I would be called to behave in certain ways. And those ways were rooted in survival mode. And now I have more options of ways to be. Your past can be your past and not impact you as much in your present. Cute baby. But yeah, these are some things from my past that made me me in my past, and that led me to be the person that I am today. Where I am compassionate, I am loving, I am nurturing and empathetic, but I don't have to play roles to have those characteristics validated. And fear of abandonment doesn't affect me as much anymore, actually. I feel like the more I've learned to love and accept myself, the thought of like, oh, I don't need to do that anymore comes up. Oh, I don't need to guide people, take people by the hand and guide them through their shame, their stories, so that they'll feel light and they'll survive. I don't need to do that. I mean, aside from work. Oh, like, yeah, I don't need to help everyone through their crisis if I don't feel called to, or if I can't. I don't need to make sure that my partner or my partner's eating right or um, being healthy because it makes me fear their survival. I don't need to do that. I don't need to be the peacemaker if I don't want to. And my value as a person, lovability, acceptability, is that a word? How acceptable I am doesn't depend on me playing roles, exhibiting certain behaviors. I'm valuable and acceptable and lovable just as I am. So I think I'm going to leave it here. I hope that there's something from my story that you might resonate with and that can assist you on your own journey of empowerment, on improving your self-esteem and self-worth, in loving and accepting yourself unconditionally. Okay. If you have any comments, feel free to share them in the comments section below, and I'll catch you later.